Chapter 2291. Didi pressed her lips together before saying, "But I touched it first." The girl put her hands on her waist. "I don't care. I saw it first, and I'm older, so you need to let me have it." Just when Didi was hesitating, a woman walked over. "Beatrice, that's not polite." Beatrice turned around. "Mom, I saw this first, and I like it." Barbara was helpless. She leaned down to look at Beatrice and said, "You can't say that you're older, so she should let you have it. That's impolite." Beatrice lowered her head and pouted. Barbara looked at Didi. "Do you like this dress too?" Didi cautiously nodded. Barbara smiled and asked the shopkeeper over. "Do you have another one of this dress?" The dress was inspired by the Little Red Riding Hood costume. It was a popular item and sold out in Basburg. This was the last one they had. Barbara sighed and touched Beatrice's head. I'll bring you somewhere else to find prettier dresses. We don't have to take this one." Beatrice was unhappy. "But I really like it." Barbara smiled. "I know, but grace is a virtue, not insistence. If you let her have the dress, someone will be nice to you in the future too." "All right." Beatrice held on to Barbara's hand and was going to walk away when Didi called out. "If you like it, you can have it." Beatrice smiled brightly and turned around. "Really?" Didi nodded. "Even though I also like it a lot, and Cameron already bought me a lot of clothes. As such, I don't need this one." Barbara had to take a longer look at this young lady, who was so understanding. She then lowered her head and said, What do you say?" Beatrice smiled and said, "Thank you." That was the first time Didi had ever heard anyone thank her. It felt as though she had done something good and someone liked her. Her heart felt warm. Cameron paid at the counter, and they left the mall with big and small bags. A familiar car was parked outside. Waylon got out and stood at the main doors of the busy mall. He was very eye-catching, and all the girls who walked past had to take a few more looks. Cameron looked up and frowned. "Why are you here?" Waylon looked at the bags she was carrying and raised his brows. "You use my credit card but won't let me come here." She choked. "You're such a miser." "I didn't use too much money, only a few hundred." He smiled. A few hundred could be someone's salary for a month. Cameron handed the bags to him. "Since you're here, why don't you help me carry them?" He took them and kept them in the car. Didi got into the car. When Cameron wanted to get in, Waylon pulled her aside and hugged her. "You sit in front." Cameron looked into the car and clenched her jaw, then whispered, "I'm warning you, don't be touchy in front of Didi." Waylon leaned in close and said, "I'm not being touchy." Cameron pressed her hands to his chest. "Wayne, you." "Is this Wayne or Coleman?" A familiar voice came from behind. Chapter 2292. Waylon turned around and suddenly smiled. "Aunt Barbara." Barbara walked over while holding Beatrice's hand. "It's Wayne." The car window was down, so Beatrice saw Didi sitting in the car. "Isn't she the girl from the store?" Waylon patted her head. Do you know Didi?" Beatrice looked up at him. "Is her name Didi?" "We met her while shopping with Mommy just now. She let me have a dress that we both wanted." Barbara told Waylon what had transpired in the store, and Waylon smiled at Didi. "You did well." Didi was bashful at the compliment. Barbara smiled too. "Didi is Freya's niece." That's why she looked familiar. Everyone in Basburg knew that Freya had a niece, and Barbara had heard of her too. She just never thought that they would bump into her at the mall. That was fate. She noticed Cameron and raised her brows. Could this be Miss Southern? Cameron was surprised. "How did you know?" She had just been in Basburg for a short time. Barbara smiled. "We're friends with the senior Goldmans." "Do you think there'd be something that I don't know?" They were in a group chat, and the previous socialite group was now a group for ladies. There weren't many people in the group, because only those really close to them were part of it. They talked about all kinds of news in Basburg. Riley and Zyla were there too. How could they not know what Maisie told them in the group? Cameron smiled a little awkwardly. Coming to Basburg seemed to be a trap. They were all part of the plan, and she was the lamb waiting for slaughter. Barbara looked at Waylon. You need to put in more effort. Waylon smiled widely. I will. Beatrice leaned on the window. Dee, come play with me when you can. Dee smiled and nodded. Okay. On the way back, Cameron rested her head on her fist and leaned against the window. You have such a big circle of family and friends. Waylon looked forward. Do we? There are more that you're going to meet. Cameron looked at him in surprise. I never said I wanted to meet them. He smiled. If Aunt Barbara knows about you, my godmother probably does too. Now that everyone knows you, do you think you can get away? Cameron turned away. You're trapping me. He smiled but didn't reply. 2 days later, at the hospital, Freya was breastfeeding in the room. When the nurse took the baby, she smiled and said, Miss Pruitt, your daughter has been in the incubator and is recovering well. No issues or diseases were detected, so you'll be able to be discharged tomorrow. Freya smiled. Thank you. The nurse placed her daughter back into the crib next to her bed. After Charmaine was fed, she would sleep soundly and rarely cry, so it was easy to care for her. Colton walked into the room with a healthy meal and placed it on the table. These are from a well-known nutritionist. It's great for your postpartum recovery. Freya looked at him. I'll be discharged tomorrow. Colton was startled. So soon? Freya squinted. You don't want me to leave? Colton moved the food in front of her and sat at the edge of the bed. Why would I not? Freya picked up a fork. Why do you look disappointed then? Colton raised his brows and looked at her. I'm not. Don't accuse me of something that's not true. Chapter 2293. Freya ate the food. After the child is born, love is no longer as intense. Colton chuckled. After giving birth to the child, you have the energy to bicker with me, huh? She continued to eat and ignored him. He hadn't shown any appreciation ever since Charmaine's birth. What made her angrier was that he would help her with everything before that, but once it was done, he would disappear. Is he no longer interested because he saw how Charm came out? Men. Colton noticed that she had a dark aura and was cautious. Who made you angry? Freya glared at him because she thought the question was rhetorical. Colton didn't know what to do. He moved next to her and was going to hug her, but she blocked his hands. Don't hug me. He retracted his arms. Freya looked at him and asked, You really stopped because I said so? Colton chuckled. Well, do you want a hug or not? She said, Hug me when you figure out what's wrong. Colton stared at her and could guess why she was acting coy, so he laughed. All right, I'll hug you tomorrow then. Freya was rendered speechless. Colton left the room in the afternoon and walked into the hallway to answer Leonardo's call. Sir, Ronald George has been arrested for aggravated assault, said Leonardo. Colton squinted. Who did he assault? Jesse Blueman. Leonardo continued. I guess it was because Jesse ratted him out about attempting to murder his wife and made him lose his mind. Ronald met her at the station today and slashed her a few times in front of the public. The passers-by worked together to stop him, and Jesse was sent to the hospital. She's alive, but her face was badly slashed, so she has been disfigured. By the way, after she was sent to the hospital, she was found to be pregnant, and... Colton frowned. And what? Leonardo took a deep breath. She claims that it's yours and that she has evidence of spending time with you at a hotel. She even said that she would rat you out if you didn't go and see her. Colton's eyes grew cold. After a long pause, he said, Where is she? Citizens Hospital. After Jessie was brought out from the emergency room, her face was wrapped up in gauze and was badly swollen. She didn't dare touch a mirror. After she was informed about her pregnancy, she lost her mind and broke down. She couldn't pay the hospital bills for her injuries, so abortion was out of the question. Her face was disfigured, and the only way to fully recover was through reconstructive surgery, which would cost tens of thousands. There was no way she would be able to get that money. The only way was to get help from Colton. The time of conception would match that day, and she had evidence of him hiring people to assault her. So, what if he was a Goldman? Once she exposed the truth, he would have a tough time too. She was ready to go down with him. Leonardo showed up at the door and let Colton walk in. Colton loosened his tie and calmly said, "Very gutsy of you to accuse me." Jessie clenched her jaw. "Mr. Goldman, are you going to deny what you did to me? I have evidence and have nothing left to lose, so I don't care. You, however, are a Goldman. I'm sure you care about your name?" Colton raised his brows, revealing his cold eyes. "How much do you want?" Jessie saw that he went straight to the point, so she unabashedly held out a finger. $1 million. Colton smirked. $1 million? You think too highly of yourself. Chapter 2294. Mr. Goldman, $1 million is nothing to you. As long as you give me the money, I promise that all this will be kept between you and me. Colton raised his brows. Why should I believe you? Colton stopped next to the bed and stared at her with cold eyes. After I give you the money, you'll just spend it and come back to me for more. Jessie Blueman, do you think I'm as easy to con as Ronald George? Jessie froze as though he read her mind and immediately said, Aren't you afraid that I will expose you? He pulled out a chair and slowly sat down. Go ahead. Jessie was stunned. You. Colton crossed his legs. You used your position, coerced Didi to harm herself, and forced her to take medication. You even told her to hurt her aunt's child. All those are punishable by law. You say that you have evidence of me hiring people to assault you, then go ahead and expose it. Do you think anyone will believe you? Jessie's heart leaped, and she found it hard to breathe. You. Even if I did all that, Didi is fine. It was just an attempt, but it will be different for you. Once the police start their investigation, there's no way you can get away. Really? Colton touched his watch. Why didn't you call the police when you had the chance? She choked and broke out in a cold sweat. She hadn't called the police because she couldn't let Ronald know she had been assaulted. Once she had gotten enough money from him, she would be able to threaten Colton with that. She never thought that Ronald would be so cruel and almost kill her. She had been slashed a few times and was disfigured. How could she just let things slide? Colton squinted, his gaze piercing. I guess you've thought about blackmailing me one day. That's why you left Ronald. You were going to use this against me, even if Ronald didn't do anything, right? Jessie avoided his eyes. Bullshit. You just don't want to take responsibility for it. I'm not afraid of you, I have nothing to lose, so I am ready to bring you down with me. Colton suddenly got up and leaned in. Jessie was immediately anxious. What are you doing? Colton grabbed the blanket and pulled it away. She didn't manage to hide her phone, so Colton took it. He looked at the voice recording. The evidence that you're talking about is a voice recording? Jessie froze, and her eyes were wide open. He found out. Colton smirked, deleted the voice recording, and looked up with darkness in his eyes. Since you won't let things go, I guess I should help you. I'm sure you need someone to take care of you in your bedridden state. I know someone who can do that. He hurt you because he loved you too much, and now that you're pregnant, I'm positive that he will gladly take care of you. Jessie knew who he was referring to, and her eyes were filled with fear. No. I'm sorry. Mr. Goldman, please, not him. I won't do it again. Colton tossed the phone onto the bed and turned around. Don't you think it's too late to be sorry? Jessie Blueman, you reap what you sow. You should have been worried that this day would come when you tore Ronald's family apart. Chapter 2295. The next day. A few luxury cars were parked outside the hospital. The media found out what happened, and they were camping outside. Maisie, who was carrying her granddaughter, walked out under the bodyguard's protection. Colton held Freya and walked behind them. The reporters rushed forward to be the first to report on the news. "Mr. Goldman, did you have an illegitimate child with Miss Pruitt? There was no announcement about your wedding before this, so I'd like to know if you got together, because Miss Pruitt was pregnant." One of the reporters walked in front and asked questions that were straight to the point. Colton and Freya were just confirmed to be married, and when she was later found to be pregnant, people were discussing their relationship status online. Some reporters turned to Maisie. "Mrs. Goldman, do you have anything to say about this?" Maisie was carrying the baby and tried to hide Charmaine's face from the cameras. She smiled. "I'm glad that you care so much about my son and Freya. Even though I'm not sure what people are saying, I stand by them." The reporter was shocked. Did that mean that she had accepted Freya as her daughter-in-law? After hearing what Maisie said, Colton turned to the person next to him and calmly answered the reporter's question. "There's no need to guess what my relationship with Freya is. I don't care what people think of us, but one thing that I'm sure of is that I would marry her even if it wasn't because of our child. There's something that I haven't had the chance to do, and since you're all here, I'd like you to be witnesses." Freya looked at Colton in shock. The place fell silent, and cameras were all on them. Colton turned to Freya and took a purple ring box out of his pocket. He opened it, and a pink diamond ring was inside. There was a commotion. A pink diamond. The color of the gem was clearer than any other pink diamond. Someone immediately Googled the ring's price, and it was at least $1 million. Freya was shocked. "What?" Colton got down on one knee in front of all the reporters and handed the ring to her. "Freya Pruitt, will you marry me?" Freya's eyes were red. "Are you serious?" Colton smiled. "Very." She looked down, and her nose felt sour. An indescribable rush of emotions got to her. She held back her tears and held out a hand. "Yes." Colton took the ring out and put it on her ring finger. "There's no going back once it's on." Freya chuckled as she wiped a tear away. "Okay." Maisie looked at them, then at the child in her arms, and smiled while holding the baby's hand. "Hope, your father just proposed to your mother. You're happy too, right? Hashtag Coleman Goldman proposes in public hashtag. Hashtag Coleman Goldman denies getting married because of the baby hashtag. Once the news got out, it immediately went into trending. Everyone online started congratulating them and was envious. Naturally, there were some skeptical people. Hashtag would you believe what they say? Marriages between people from different social classes never last long. Cinderella marrying a prince only works in fairy tales, not in real life. Hashtag. Chapter 2296. Are you serious? Don't think that everyone is Cinderella. In the fairy tale, Cinderella was a noble before she fell from grace. You're even less than Cinderella. Besides, the Goldmans haven't even said anything yet, so why do you have so many things to say? Hashtag I remember that someone exposed her identity before. She's related to the family of the Yaramore. Hashtag. Hashtag, but she isn't part of the royal family. Her grandmother was the mistress of the king. In other words, she's a homewrecker. How can you help a homewrecker? Hashtag. Hashtag the difference between a homewrecker and a mistress is that the existence of a mistress is allowed. Just like how people in the past could have 3 or 4 wives, so of course, we can accept it now. At that time, it was legal. Besides, it's her grandmother who chose to be a mistress. Could she choose what family she wanted to be born into? She didn't get to enjoy any rights of the royal family either, right? I heard that she didn't have a good relationship with her family and that her mother abused her. Just because she's the descendant of a mistress, you have to have so many opinions about her? Well, that's so noble of you all. Hashtag. At the Seaview Villa. Freya caressed the ring in her hands. Even she did not expect Colton to propose to her in front of the press. When she heard that someone was coming in, she turned around. Colton walked into the room, and she asked, "Is Charm asleep?" He closed the door. "Yeah. She slept after having her dinner." Freya pressed her lips tightly and asked, "Why did you propose to me today all of a sudden? Isn't that what you want?" "Me?" she asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Yesterday, someone told me that I couldn't go near her if I couldn't figure it out yet." "I wonder who that was." Colton stopped in front of her and looked at her. "Does this not mean that you're waiting for me to propose to you?" Freya was pretty moved at first, but she was stumped after listening to what Colton said and asked, "So you propose to me not because you want to marry, but because you think I want you to marry me?" Colton crossed his arms in front of his chest and frowned. "Why are you so good at misinterpreting my words?" "Oh, so now you're blaming me for misinterpreting your words." Freya placed her hands on her waist and continued. "If you don't know how to speak, then don't speak. No one will think you are dumb if you don't speak." After a short while, he chuckled. "So, can I hug you now?" She turned her face sideways. "No. I'm mad at you now." Colton stretched his arms forward and grabbed her into his arms. "I don't have to listen to you. I have been preparing for a few days, and I was going to wait until I got home before I formally proposed to you." He had decided to propose to her in front of the press on a whim. Although it ruined his original plan, it went pretty well. She was stunned and raised her head to look at him. "You've been preparing for a few days?" He placed his face on her head and replied, "Of course. Do you think it's that easy to look for a pink diamond? It took me days before I found a seller." Something flitted across Freya's eyes, and she replied, "It's just a ring, you don't have to." "Nope." Colton lowered his head to look at her. "No matter if it's the ring for proposal or the ring for our wedding, they have to be the best out of the best." She chuckled. Colton frowned. "What are you laughing at?" "Daisy always told me that you're the stingiest out of her two brothers, but I think you're not that stingy at all since you're willing to buy a pink diamond for me," she said. He squinted and replied, "Of course, I'm not stingy. I'm just making sure that my money is spent on the right place and thing." As expected of a businessman, "You really are prudent." Freya extended her finger that was wearing the pink diamond ring and asked, "So did you spend your money at the right place?" He chuckled. "Well, I think it's pretty worth spending a few million as long as I can make the dragon lady at home happy." Chapter 2297. Freya's smile froze. Soon, Colton was kicked out of his room again. At Coralia. The shooting session came to an intermission today. All the crew members were handing out box lunches, and when they saw Daisy return to her trailer alone, Tiffany said, "Even the director, Mr. Gosling, and Mr. Lindholm are eating box lunches. Why does she have to be so special?" Someone beside her answered, "Her husband brought her meal himself." "Do you have a husband?" Tiffany was stumped. Just because her husband invested in this film doesn't mean that she can get everything her way. So, what if she won the Best Actress award? She's just throwing her weight around here. I heard that she isn't feeling well. I'm sure it's just one of her excuses to run away from her job. After Tiffany finished speaking, she looked at a young 12-year-old actor. She remembered that the young actor needed to shoot a scene in the water later, and the one who needed to save him was Nancy. An idea appeared in her head, and she walked toward the young actor. Inside the trailer, Daisy put a hot water bag on her stomach. She was in so much pain that she had lost her appetite. While Nolace was massaging her stomach, he asked, "Is it really hurt? Do you need me to talk to the director and postpone the shooting?" She took a sip of warm water from the cup and replied, "I'm fine. It's just a cramp. I'll be okay after taking some rest." Nolace picked her up and put her on his lap. "I know a way to make the cramp go away." She asked, "What is it?" Nolace lifted his eyebrows and replied, "What do you think it is?" Understanding soon dawned upon Daisy, and her cheeks turned red. "What are you talking about?" "Daisy, it's almost your turn." A crew called out to her from outside the trailer. Daisy hastily stood up from his lap and answered, "All right. I'll be there soon." Nolace frowned. He did not understand why she had to be so hardworking while she was sick. Daisy came to the group of directors. Shannon had just finished reading the script, and he raised his head. Daisy, you'll need to shoot in the water later. Are you sure you can do it? If not, we can use a body double. Daisy fell silent. What bad timing to do a shooting in the water. I have my period. However, if she used a body double, people might accuse her of being unprofessional, and it would bring trouble to the crew as well. With that thought in mind, she said, "It's okay. I can do it." Shannon nodded. All right then. You should go and get yourself ready now. All of the cameras and crew were standing around the pool with a green screen. The pool was only 5 feet deep. The young actor was moved into the water with a wire. It was cold in Karelia. Even an adult wouldn't be able to take it if they stayed too long in the water, so Shannon wanted them to finish the shooting in one go. Daisy removed her coat, took a deep breath, and jumped into the pool. The young actor was struggling inside the water. She swam toward the young actor, and just when she was about to pull him up, he pushed her away, and she was stunned. Shannon stood up and asked, "What's the matter, boy?" The young actor was shivering in the water due to the coldness as he replied, "I forgot my line." They had no other choice but to do the shooting again. However, they did not know what happened to the young actor, but he always forgot his lines and blocked the cameras. They couldn't get the shooting done no matter what. Both the young actor and Daisy were so cold that their faces were pale. Zafir suddenly noticed something and said to Shannon, "Mr. Fallon, let's take a break. I think there's something wrong with the boy." Shannon nodded. "Let's take a break." Daisy and the young actor were brought back to the ground. The crew hastily went over and handed them hot water bags and their coats. Tiffany had a triumphant grin on her face. "Aren't you not feeling well? I want to see how long you can hold on like this." Chapter 2298. Shannon brought the young actor to the side to talk to him. Daisy sat in front of a fan heater, and she felt really awful right now. She thought about how the young actor pushed her away while they were in the water. It wasn't written in the script at all, and clearly, the young actor was being uncooperative. "Daisy, are you all right?" Zafir walked toward her. Daisy was stunned and forced a smile on her face. "Yeah. I'm fine." Zafir nodded. "In another 10 minutes, we'll start shooting again. If you're not feeling well, you need to tell us." She pressed her lips tightly and replied, "Okay. I will." When the shooting resumed, Daisy still jumped into the pool without any hesitation. The crew praised her for her professionalism. After all, it was such a cold day. She was holding on despite the fact that the young actor was being uncooperative. While Daisy was swimming toward the young actor, she did not know if it was because of the coldness, but she couldn't stretch her limbs. It felt like she was losing consciousness, and her vision was blurring. Just as she caught the young actor, she released her grip before he could even start to say his line and suddenly sank into the water. The crew jerked up. What happened? Zafir took off his coat and jumped into the pool, startling the people around as they had no idea what had happened at all. Zafir carried Daisy out of the water, and the crew immediately went forward to assist him. Tiffany's face sank when she saw the scene. Why is Mr. Gosling saving her? Zafir put Daisy on the ground and patted her cheek. "Daisy! Daisy!" Daisy suddenly coughed, and Zafir put his hand on her forehead. When he felt the abnormally high temperature, he said, "Mr. Fallon, she has a fever." Shannon said, "Hurry up and send her to the hospital." Just when Zafir was about to scoop her up from the ground, a figure appeared and carried her into his arms. Nole said sternly, "I'll do it." He carried Daisy and left hurriedly. Zafir looked at his empty hands and clenched them tightly. At the hospital, Daisy was having an infusion while Nole sat beside her. Soon, Daisy finally came around. Nole wiped the sweat off her forehead and asked, "How do you feel now? Any better?" Daisy's lips were parched, and she replied, "I'm sorry for making you worried about me." Nole did not say anything. If he hadn't heard the commotion, he wouldn't have known that she had almost drowned. Although the possibility of her drowning in a 5-foot pool was rather slim, she was sick at that time, and it might be dangerous. "Are you mad at me?" "No, I'm not mad at you." Daisy held his hand tightly. "I really don't know why I would get a fever today." Knowles lifted his eyelids and looked at her. "You still wanted to work even though you were not feeling well. Should I praise you, or should I be angry with you?" She rolled her eyes and did not say anything. "Daisy, I respect your choice. I won't say no to anything you want to do, but first, I hope you can promise me that something like what happened today won't happen again." After he finished speaking, he rose to his feet and left the ward. Daisy looked at the ceiling and fell into silence. When Knowles came out of the hospital, he ran into Shannon. Shannon asked, "How is Daisy?" Knowles replied, "She has come around." Shannon sighed. "Let's give her some time to recuperate. She's been working tirelessly recently. I'll finish her part after she has recovered." Suddenly, Knowles remembered something and said, "Mr. Fallon, can I have a look at the recording for today's shooting?" Shannon was stunned, but he nodded. "Sure." Chapter 2299. Since Daisy was having a break, the crew had to finish other people's parts first. The crew was discussing how professional Daisy was. She was willing to hold on even though she was sick in order to finish her own part. When Tiffany came out of her dressing room, she crossed her arms when she heard their discussion and said, "It's nothing worth praising at all. She should have told us beforehand if she was sick. If something happens to her, she'll only blame the director and you all." The crew members looked at Tiffany, and one of them couldn't help himself and ask, "What's your problem with Daisy, Tiffany? Why does it seem to me that you don't like her very much?" "That's right. Daisy has never done any awful things before. Besides, she's an award-winning actress. She didn't complain about a mistake she didn't make and repeated the scene again and again. Isn't that enough to show how professional she is?" "She's professional?" Tiffany scoffed coldly. "There are many more people in the entertainment industry who are even more dedicated than her. She's just a rich girl trying her best to make everyone think she's a dedicated actor by working in the cold weather while having a fever. There's nothing worth mentioning at all." The crew members saw something, and they all left. When Tiffany turned around, she saw Zafir standing in the corridor and was stunned. "What are you doing here, Mr. Gosling?" She forced a smile on her face. "Did he hear what I said just now?" Zafir lifted his eyelids, but there was no expression on his face. "Relax. I'm not here to accuse you of anything." Tiffany froze. She explained, "Mr. Gosling, you must have misunderstood me. I just think that as actors, we should do our job properly. Being an actor isn't easy, so there's no need for us to do something like that to promote ourselves." Zafir lowered his head as a dark glint crossed his eyes. "Actor? What did you say to that?" Tiffany froze. She did not dare to look Zafir in the eyes as she replied, "Mr. Gosling, I already told you to relax. I just want to know the whole story." Zafir walked up to her. "After all, I already know where the problem is. Do you think Mr. Fallon and the others don't know about it?" Tiffany became nervous, but did not dare to tell him the whole truth. "I'm sorry, Mr. Gosling. I didn't mean it. I just told the young actor not to finish his part so soon. I was just trying to see if Daisy was pretending." She had indeed asked the young actor not to finish his part so soon, but she was targeting Daisy. She had told the young actor that Daisy was a bad woman. Kids did not have the same ability to judge as adults. They wouldn't go to look into the things themselves, so the young actor just did what he was told. "Really?" Zafir smiled faintly. "Miss Cullen, I hope you can be honest with me. After all, once the truth is found out, will you be able to stay in the entertainment industry in the future?" Cold beads of sweat were oozing out of Tiffany's back while her face turned pale. Zafir placed his hand on her shoulder and said meaningfully, "I'm doing this for your own good. If you keep on talking bad about Daisy, it'll only make you look suspicious. I'm sure you don't want to get kicked out of the film because of some unwanted issue, right? Mr. Gosling, are you willing to believe in me? Tiffany's eyes glowed up with hope. Zafir smiled, but his smile did not reach his eyes. As long as you tell me the truth, maybe I can help you. Chapter 2300. Tiffany's heart leaped into a gallop. Does this mean that he's going to believe in me and help me? This is great. Okay. I'll tell you the whole story. Tiffany told Zafir everything. However, she was in the midst of the joy of being trusted by the object of her affection and failed to notice the coldness hidden in Zafir's eyes. After a short while, Zafir asked calmly, since I'm willing to believe in you, will you believe in me too? She smiled. Of course. He replied with a smile and said, in this case, let me tell you something. Knowles is looking into this, and I guess he'll come and find you very soon. Her smile froze, and she asked frantically, then what should I do? Zafir looked at her and said, I can help you, but how are you going to pay back the favor? Tiffany said shyly, I can give you whatever you want. Zafir went closer to her and whispered into her ear. Here's the plan, and I just need you to do one thing. Knowles was watching the recording in the ward while Daisy was eating an apple on the bed. Suddenly, she said, I'm not sure what has gotten into that young actor. We were doing well during our rehearsal, but he suddenly refused to cooperate with me when we were in the water. Maybe that young actor is inexperienced, so he got camera fright when the shooting started. Knowles squinted and closed the laptop. Do you really think like that? She froze for a moment and lowered her head. Actually, when he pushed me away, I could feel he didn't like me. But I have never done anything wrong to him before. This was the thing that confused her. Knowles put down his laptop and sat by the bed. As he caressed her head, he said, I'll get to the bottom of this. You just need to rest well. Daisy gave him the apple. He took a look at it and said, I don't want an apple. Then what do you want? Knowles looked at her fixedly and replied, what do you think? She was stumped and hid inside the duvet. Nope. Not now. Not when I'm sick. He chuckled and landed a kiss on the top of her head. Alright, I'm just joking. I'll punish you if I notice that you've not been resting when I come back. Knowles rose to his feet and left the ward. After he closed the door, he received a text message from an unknown number. Do you want to know what happened during that day? Then come to room 6221. Knowles squinted. Apparently, this person was prepared, and they were related to this incident. Knowles drove his car to the hotel where the crew members were staying. He found his way to room 6221, but the door was not closed. He narrowed his eyes and knocked on the door. However, nobody answered. He took a look at the camera at the corner of the corridor and squinted again. He put his phone back into his pocket and entered the room. Suddenly, a woman draped in a towel rushed out of the bathroom and hugged him while shouting, Mr. Knowles, please don't leave me. I really love you. Knowles threw the woman away. The towel on the woman's body fell to the floor, and Knowles turned his head around. He walked out of the room when he sensed someone coming that way. Just as he expected, a group of reporters suddenly appeared. The woman hugged his leg and cried, please don't leave me. I've already given myself to you. You need to be responsible for me. Mr. Knowles, are you cheating on Miss Vanderbilt?